Magnus is an Alex simp. Love him for that. Hello, all you beautiful constellations. This is gonna be a different kind of video. I hope it's not too boring because it's just gonna be me talking. Maybe this is one of those things that's just for me. I don't know. I apologize if you can hear the fan and if it's distracting you. It's hot. It's just hot today. I'm sorry. I just finished Magnus Chase, Ship of the Dead. I loved it. I do have some thoughts. I don't know if this is gonna be like a negative rant review, but it's gonna be a review and there's gonna be some ranting. So I don't know. But I would just like to say that, first of all, this video is not going to be very well organized. Not enough people watch me to care. But second of all, so as we know, I love Rick Riordan and his books. I have pretty much read all of them except for a couple of the short ones. And when I was younger, I read the first two Magnus Chase books. And then I just never got around to the third one. And it was sitting on my shelf throughout all of high school. And I decided to read every single Rick Riordan book that I have. Not sure why. I think it was a comfort thing. Pandemic really hit hard. But I finally got to read Ship of the Dead. And it was pretty good. Listen, rereading Magnus Chase gave me a newfound appreciation for all of it, because wonderful diversity. Honestly, probably the best diversity that is in most of the Rick Riordan books, maybe save for the Kane Chronicles. I don't know what it is for everything that's not a Percy Jackson book. Suddenly there's great rep. Listen. Cut the feed. But yeah, I just loved, first of all, deaf representation, people of color, LGBTQ plus representation. Alex is our icon. I love Alex. Let's see, I wrote maybe 3 points down. Okay, but yeah, now to the meat of this video. The whole reason why I'm making this video. Maybe I'll end on the positive stuff, okay? Stick with me here. I think we all know that I'm a huge Loki stan. It's my one defining personality trait. I love Loki. I knew that we were gonna have to, watch Loki get defeated. I knew that, okay? I'm not like, this book stinks because Loki was defeated. No, that's not what this is. I have an issue with the way that it happened. So, let me explain. In the first book, when we first meet Loki, of course he's being all charming because he wants Magnus to join his team. That's kind of on brand. But I do think there was more sympathy given to Loki because that man had to go through some garbage and not all of it was fair. And he talks about that. And we spent a lot of time actually in the first and second books dwelling on this idea that there's no such thing as good and evil. That the only thing that separates those two things are that the good people hold power in society and thus can control the way people think of them. Because Magnus doesn't hold the Aesir in high esteem. Probably doesn't. He probably thinks about them the same way that Loki does, let's be honest. But he would never say that because they're the ones in power. And the fact that Loki is very outspoken about his opinion put him in a position where he was viewed as a threat. And we all know the effect of if someone thinks one idea of you all the time and you can't escape this reputation, then you might as well just be that thing, right? Like, we've seen it in a lot of other forms of media. We've probably seen it in real life. So it's very easy to see these things in Loki in the first book, even in the second book. It feels like it's then pushed aside in the third book. It kind of feels like they're like, hey, remember all this stuff that like made these quests really interesting? This idea of, is Magnus on the right side? Does that even matter? What makes a hero? Because that idea comes up in various different forms. This good versus evil question, but also the question of whether being violent makes you a hero, because the Vikings and the Aesir are arguably very violent. Magnus is not a soldier, he's a healer, but he's still a hero. You know what I mean? Are you following what I'm saying? I hope you are. I hope you're taking notes and paying attention, because I certainly don't know what's coming out of my mouth. See, this question comes up a lot. And then it kind of feels like in the third book they're saying, hey, you know those questions we asked? Yeah, it doesn't matter. We're just gonna like defeat Loki and not pay any mind to the fact that these were good questions that were asked. Like, maybe we should consider. Doesn't matter. Loki's gone. Like, that's what matters here. Listen, I'm not saying that Loki shouldn't have been defeated. I'm not saying that they were wrong for stopping Ragnarok. These were good things. I do, however, think that they could have more smoothly had Magnus make the decision to stop Loki in a different way, because I think it would have been more impactful for Magnus to go, you know what, like, Loki, you're right, but also here's why we need to stop Ragnarok. You know, like, just because you're right doesn't mean we should not try to be the best version of ourselves. You know, like, that's very on brand for Magnus. He thinks the best of everyone. That's kind of like the point of, I didn't know if I wanted this to be a spoiler review. I think by this point it's going to be a spoiler review, but that's how he defeats Loki, by seeing the best in everyone. So it's very on brand for Magnus to be like, Loki, I hear you, see your point, I agree with you, but I disagree with how you're doing it because it doesn't go with my moral code. That doesn't make me better than you, doesn't make me worse, I don't know if it matters, but that's just what my opinion is. I think that would have had a lot more weight than just Magnus going, I'm gonna ignore everything that Loki just said because the right thing to do is to stop him. I get that Magnus isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, okay? Like, he's a little oblivious. He's smart in other ways. I do still think he could have had this thought at some point. That's all I ask. It just bothered me. Also, during the fighting, it was actually kind of painful for me to read. I know that the point of a fighting is to hit your enemy where it hurts, you know, with the words and everything. But because Magnus was doing this against the rules, and he's, you know, like, thinking the best of his teammates, and he's complimenting them, and he's giving them power through his words, I didn't think he had to go so hard on Loki. And this is where I acknowledge that I'm just being like a Loki stan, because it really, like, to some degree, what he said had weight and was maybe kind of right. But I do think it was unnecessary to tell Loki that he's alone and he always will be, because of his punishment. So the book suggests this. You're not going to read into this if you haven't thought about it before, because Loki does not seem like a good parent. He's not. Like, to Samira and Alex, he's not. But to some degree, I do think family was once very important to Loki. Otherwise, why would the Aesir have killed his kids as punishment if they wouldn't have known that it's gonna hurt him some way? Because it's very obvious that it affected Sigyn, but the punishment wasn't for Sigyn. So if it mattered for Sigyn and not for Loki, I wouldn't see why the Aesir are like, we're gonna kill your kids, because they're not punishing Sigyn, they're punishing Loki. So that had to have meant that at some point, Loki really valued his family and loved his family. And since then, because he's been punished and they've been brutally murdered and he's had nothing going for him, I think he made the choice to push people away to protect himself, which is something that I understand, something that I have done, something I think a lot of us have done. It's very clear to me that that's what that was. That him not being a good parent and him viewing his kids as things that he owns was a choice that he made to protect himself emotionally, because if he viewed his children as possessions, it's a lot easier then if something happens to him to be like, well, I'll just make another thing. It's not right. I'm not saying it's right, but I am saying I understand, which is why I think it was just a little cruel for Magnus to, I guess it's effective, because the point of a fighting, like I said, is to expose the things that your enemy is most self-conscious about, or, is going to impact them the most. So it makes sense for Magnus to be like, you're alone and you forever will be. It just hurt. It was just really painful. I don't know. I think it could have not been in there, but I do recognize that you need a final blow somehow, so maybe I just needed to get that out of my system. I don't know, but yeah. Second point, maybe third, those two things were kind of two separate points, but the next thing that I would like to talk about is Sigyn. So, I've talked about this to a couple of my friends, so majority of you might not know, but Sigyn is very extremely important to me, and I'm not sure why. I just kind of like imprinted on her at some point, and I was like, ah, yeah, Sigyn. But I take issue with any book or form of media that kind of uses the abused wife trope. It bothers me. I, to a degree, understand the choice to have Sigyn be silent. We don't know a lot about her. We don't know why she married Loki. We don't know why she stayed with him when he cheated on her with Angerboda. We don't even know if he cheated on her. I know that polyamory was a thing for the Vikings. And also, well, maybe it wasn't like a thing, but like women could divorce their husbands on legal grounds and they wouldn't have been shamed. And also polyamory has always been a thing. So essentially what I'm saying is I don't know if the Angerboda thing was Loki cheating on Sigyn or a thing that they both agreed on. Anyway, that's not important. What's important is we don't know a lot of Sigyn and her circumstance and whether or not certain things that Loki did, he did behind her back or he did with her consent. We don't know why she decided to stay with him during his punishment. I like to say it was because of love, not because of fear. But this book kind of made it the latter. Sigyn doesn't say a word. She's just kind of this presence that's unsettling to me, I think, for the wrong reasons. She just doesn't seem very powerful. And I think she does hold a lot of power. I think it is powerful to say, marriage is so important to me that I'm going to stick this out. it is powerful for me to say, I'm gonna hold to this bowl over your head until my arms are shaking for the end of time because I want to minimize your pain in light of all the trauma we faced. Like, that deserves more credit. I don't think Sigyn was given the credit she was due. It just also really bothers me to see the way that Loki would talk to her. I mean, he didn't address her very often, and that's also part of the problem. But let's, in particular, talk about the scene where, in the second book, they go to Loki's chambers, and he's trying to break free. And Sigyn, we assume, purposefully let the poison splash into Loki's face, which is, first of all, an action that is typical of, like, the abused wife trope. Like, she doesn't say anything, she kind of does something on accident to get back at, you know, the man who, like, hurt her, or to stand up for herself finally, or, you know, whatever. She does this thing on accident. And then Loki calls her a stupid woman. And I don't know. That bothered me, like, all around. So then by the time we get to the third book, and Sigyn is on Nalgafar, I think that's how you say it, with Loki. Still hasn't said a word. I don't even know if they talked at all. And when Magnus says that Loki is alone and forever will be, she disappears. And I don't know how I feel about that, honestly. Good for her, I guess, because in this iteration of their story, Loki's abusive, like, it just is. I just don't think that was the original intention for Sigyn and Loki. Again, that could just be my personal biases as a Loki stan, and I guess a Sigyn stan. I don't know. Sigyn isn't my kin. I don't know. I might find the words for this later and maybe edit it in. I'm not sure. But to me, I think that was painful, not because it showed how weak Loki is, but because it was just put in the story. I don't feel like it had a reason other than to show that Loki compensates for his weakness with, like, violence and fear, which is typical of any, like, villain in a story. It was just a trope used. Okay, this is the bottom line. Sigyn, a character who has her own personality and characterization and could have been given power through that, was simply used as a way to show that Loki is undeserving of kindness and human decency, and that he's a villain and always will be. And I don't like that. I don't like seeing women be used as a way to make a man seem more cool. I mean, I don't like abuse in stories and in real life. Shouldn't do it. But I also don't like that the abuse was written in this story as a way to use this woman, who's amazing, as a way to show that someone else isn't amazing. I think that wasn't fair to her. And they gave her a bit of that power back in the end when Magnus asks the gods, you know, if Sigyn wishes to return to Loki's side, will you let her? Like, will you give her that choice? I think that's valid. I like that that was in there. Because I like that we acknowledge that we don't know a lot about Sigyn or her motives. We know that she didn't want Ragnarok to happen. We don't know much else about that. So I guess, you know, kudos to her for having that mystery. But I do wish that she was treated more as her own person earlier on. And that's what I'm going to say about Sigyn. My final point that I have written, I think is more of a positive. It is more of a positive. I just love Alex. I love that Alex was in this book. Well, in all the books. Well, not all the books. Alex wasn't in the first one. But I love that Alex was introduced. I love pretty much everything about them. Their ability to take what's special and unique about Loki and use it in a very positive way. I liked the gender fluid representation. I liked the fact that Alex has that thing, I think, in the second book. It's that scene where Alex is telling Magnus, my experience as a gender fluid person is not everyone's experience. I'm not the poster child. Like, take my experience as my experience, but I'm not gonna explain everything to you. Do your own research. I liked that. I think we need to talk about that more, say that more. It's just, I liked that. Alex was a very cool, powerful character, and their arc was really nice and interesting. I ship Alex and Magnus a lot. I pretty much underlined, I pretty much tabbed all of their like romantic interactions. Or anytime Magnus thought anything really nice of Alex. Magnus is an Alex simp. Love him for that. Love him for that. I wish we could see more. I know Alex is being really careful about being in a romantic relationship with Magnus, probably because they're both dead, and that's like the smart move. Like, take things really slow. Good for you. I hope that there's more in the future at some point. The end of this implied another book. Trials of Apollo implied another book in the Magnus Chase realm of things. Please give us more Magnus and Alex. I beg you. I love them so much. I love Hearth and Blithstone as well. They're so cute. Just tired dads. I love them with all of my heart. Yeah, I think in general, the characters in Magnus Chase are just so much more lovable and memorable than, dare I say it, Percy Jackson or Kane Chronicles. It could just be the vibrancy. I don't know. These books are just so much more fun. They're so much more fun. Even with all of the terrible, terrifying trauma, they're just fun. And the other books, like, they're fun, but they get really serious, and you're like, okay, this is good, and I like it. I like the characters, I'm invested, but it's like serious. These books, fun. Love that. I just had a lot of fun reading them, and I really liked them. And if you watched this whole video, thanks. Thank you for listening to me and my silly, boring opinions. Hopefully I'll find a way to make this video more exciting. If not, that's okay. This is kind of like, I guess, a video diary. I don't know. But thank you all for tuning in. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day or night, depending on when you're watching this. Get some sleep, please. People don't sleep enough. Get some sleep. Go drink some water. Eat a snack or some food if you're hungry. Like, take a break. Take care of yourself. Please, stay safe. And yeah, dream big, stay kind. I will see you in the next video. Love you. Bye.